My name is Emer Martin, and I'm recording this for the Skibbereen Speakeasy sessions. I'm meant to be in Skibbereen tonight, but we have a plague going on globally. You know the story as much as I do. That's why I'm doing it in Zoomland. Everything's in Zoomland these days. I'm going to read a part of my book, a little excerpt from the Cruelty Man. And this book really is a book about how power gets abused. And when you have power concentrated without limits, things get ugly. So the piece I'm going to read is, I was thinking, what would I do? I'm going to read this because you've just had an election in Ireland, and I'm shocked at how the people voted one way, but you're getting the same old governments we've had for the last 60 years, right? It's either Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil, nothing different. And how they always seem to hold on to power, no matter how you vote. That's very depressing. This piece, I wrote it. It's the history of Ireland in 4 minutes. And it was written at a very particular time. It was when we all sat stunned watching on the news as we realized Ireland was being sold out to the International Monetary Fund for a huge debt. They were crucifying us for a debt of a bank that nobody even had accounts in, if you remember that time. And then suddenly the world went quiet. It was as like the land itself responded. There was a great snow and Ireland just stopped. And for a month we sat frozen in our houses, unable to move out, stunned by the enormity that we had lost our independence once again. And I wrote this piece, I call it Going Underground, but it was during that time in response to what had happened yet again. So from the Cruelty Man. I was going underground, under my life, under the country, under the barley, under the potatoes, under the churches, under the lunatic asylums, under the cowshit, under the wild primroses on the hedges, under the schools, under Bridget's cloak, under the bed where I gave birth to my twins, under the courts that stole my children, under the chieftains and druids who sliced our sons' nipples and stuck them face down in the Iron Age bog, under Patrick's staff that pinned me to the bed where the doctors held me down and pinned electrodes to my head, under my womb madness, under the connivance of monks that took our stories and twisted them into their own, under the Vikings who plundered our treasures, under the betrayers, the snitches, the deal makers who welcomed our enemies to the shore, under the Normans pouring tar at us from their freezing green zone castles, under the flight of earls who left us to ourselves. What a joke, as if we stood on the edge of the cliffs with hankies, waving them off, poor peasants that we were. Come back, O nobility, and fuck us again. Under Cromwell, who scoured the land of us and banished us to windy, wet mountains where even the sheep lost their footing. Under the Brits, who beat the language out of us. Under the landlords who put us out on the soft side of the road, under the world where the fairies are, where the limbo babies' tiny skeletons still cage their earth-stuck souls because heaven won't open to them. Under the tangled roots of imported trees, under the huge machines that stripped the bogs empty, under the music that squeaked out of boxes, the air that rushes from flutes, the bang of the drum, under the low-lying, ever-thickening clouds, under the blight, under the boats that shipped corn to England, under the deck of the coffin ships, under the people of 1916 who were what but children of the starved who had crawled out of the West. Under Padraig Pearse's gammy eye and bad poetry, under the Stoneyard and Kilmainham jail where they tied a wounded James Connolly to the chair and shot him. Under the black and tans, under the constant grey sky, under failed negotiations of poor leadership, under each other now, under the blue shirts, the uncivil war, under Béal na Blá, under Archbishop McQuaid rasping in De Valera's ear as they made plans for us, under the poets who ordered us to open the door without giving us the key, under the picture of the Sacred Heart offering us as an edible organ pressed with thorns, under the singers who made us shiver but would not warm us, under the endless decades of the rosary, under the museums that hid the Sheila na gigs from us, under the pricks of self-loathing men who stuck it into us and condemned us as dirty with their juice, under the Virgin Mary who will one day show no mercy to that child in Granard. She is the one and only, the holy and immaculate Virgin that renders all us mother whores. Under the cassocks of the bishops and cardinals and the popes with their useless clocks ticking like metronomes, marking out time until the chickens come home to roost. Under Ben Bulben, under the endless verses of rebel songs, under the drink, the poachine that could turn you raw blind, the Guinness that blackens your shite, the Ishkabaha that bursts your liver, under the fierce watch of the bad nuns who ate their sandwiches and drank their lemonade as the starved children in their care collected turf for their parlours. Under the solicitors, the guards, the school principals, the doctors, the bank managers, the decent people of Ireland who you need to sign for your passport. Under the thud and hum of the laundries, under the heaps of banned books from exiled scribblers, under the shoeless bloody feet of slave children in the obscene care of church and state, uncounted lives melted like snow off a ditch. Under the fairy forts in Meath, the hagstones in Berra, the disappeared Georgian buildings, under the INLA, the RUC, the IRA, the UDA, the UVF, the SAS, the UVF, MI5, under the bombs, the assassinations, the murders, the kneecapping, the man who was shot dead outside his house last night, under the toll roads that they built to slice through a Neolithic world they failed to understand. Under the tribunals, the concessions, the confessions, the recessions, the depressions, the brown bags of money under the tables, under the triple chins of the dazed fat creatures who sold us out to the IMF and went crawling off to the bog with huge pensions. Under the heroin, the flats, the dirty canals, the coke come-downs, the cathedral-like shopping centres, the developers, the bankers, the crap, ugly buildings standing empty, the great ongar, the unlandscaped blank green spaces in the sprawling housing estates built on floodplains, the unsignposted roundabouts. Which way now? Which way now? Under your shrivel breast, O hag, that I sucked and sucked, but it was too late to come to you for nourishment, so dried out were you with our neglect. And when you cried out in pain, it was only black crows that squeezed out of your tear ducts and flew at me as I lay in your embrace, and all of these hag crows plucked chunks out of me until dismembered I was taken off inside the black noise of the flock in small separate pieces and squawkingly digested and shat out onto the forest floor and eaten by insects, and inside these creepy crawlies under the canopy of trees, when the insects died and dried out, the soil of this land took me for what it could suck out of me, which of course wasn't much by then, was it? Oh, Ireland. So that's the history of Ireland in 4 minutes or 3 minutes from the Cruelty Man. Now I'm thinking, good luck with your new government. Same old, right? And here, I sit in California, and there's a certain level of despair too. But we have to resist. We have to resist in Ireland. We have to resist in Brazil, in the Philippines, in the Middle East, in Iran, in Palestine, right? Everywhere has to have its own resistance. So what I want to read to you next is a poem I wrote when Trump got into power, and I was going to the airport to protest because the first act he did was bring in a Muslim ban, which was ban 9 different Muslim country, 9 different people from Muslim countries actually even entering the US. So this was racist and Islamophobic. And I think this poem is meaning for me because I read it out at the protest in the airport. So it does have that meaning of poetry as an act of resistance, which I believe it can be. We need our poets and we need our writers and we need our artists in times like this. So this is called Resist. What have we done? We fear a ludicrous man, A liar, barking insults, deafening dreams, his tiny heart squeezed dry, a blind, crafty rat stumbling a maze of hate. His empty eyes shining with avarice. What will happen now? We have spent 500 years yoked to their industry, waving their fake flags, murdering each other for their markets and resources until the earth can barely hold onto us anymore. Resist. Is there a choice? We cannot keep marching through the trauma of their industrialization, imperialism, neocolonialism, corporations crowned as nations. We can no longer lie in their trenches, clutching their weapons, buying their crap, hating each other, fighting ourselves. Resist. To thrive, to survive, to exist. Resist. The old earth is hot flashing messages of truth. With hurricane breath and glacial tears raising the oceans, we took too much from her and gave it to too few. Resist. The deceiver in the penthouse suite, we can topple him with the truth, for we have been loved by life, and we have loved those born outside their walls in the shadows of their towers. Resist the thug in and his grotesque parade of devouring henchmen. Resist, chase them out of history, for they do not know how much we can love each other. They cannot imagine how we feel the earth speaking from inside of us. They cannot fathom how much we learn from the streets. Those who rule us do not know our love, but they will feel the full force of it now. Resist. Thank you, Skibbereen. Maybe next year I can come in person if the plague is over. And thank you for inviting me to do this. And thank you for making me put on makeup in the afternoon and get out of my tracksuit. For that, I will be eternally grateful. And miss everybody in Ireland right now. I'm really feeling it. And especially miss my parents and my family and not getting to see them for a long time. So I hope this plague will end. And I hope we can all resist power. Power, when it is unchecked, is always brutal, no matter where it is on earth. So resist. Thank you so much. Goodbye, Skibbereen.